Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. My name's Chris Byrne and today we're going to be reviewing my new 8-string Omen Elite 8 by Schecter. So, as someone who's never owned an 8-string guitar before, there were a couple of things I was looking for. First of all, because I'd never owned one, I didn't want to be spending too much money on it. And the other thing was, I was pretty confident that I wanted a fan fret version of an 8-string. The reason being for that is, you may have seen that I own a PRS Holcomb 7-string. It's been a fantastic guitar for me. What I would say, however, is it has a 26.5-inch scale length. And whilst the advantage of that is that it keeps the low string nice and tight, so when you dig into it for those lower tunings, it keeps the tuning like nice and solid. I did notice that sometimes when you're bending on the higher strings, it can actually get quite tough. Even if you go from like tens down to nines, for example, in standard, I did feel like some like problems there. So I think fan fret, I was pretty convinced was the way I wanted to go, and I'm really glad that I did, because the first thing that for me with this guitar is brilliant is we have 25.5 inches to 27.5 inches. So that's from high to low. So what that means is when you're doing any high bending up here, it feels a bit nice and slinky, what you're not more normally used to. And then when you're playing the low strings, it stays nice and tight, so you can basically live out your Meshuggah sleep token dreams to your heart's content, which is fantastic. The Schecter Omen Elite 8 features a mahogany body with a poplar burl top and a bolt-on one-piece neck with a rosewood fingerboard. The neck is a fanned fret from 25.5 to 27.5 inches with 24 jumbo frets. It has Schecter designed diamond heretic pickups connected to a 5-way pickup selector and a single volume and tone control. It also has a hip shot bridge, a Graphtec nut, and Schecter's own brand's locking tuners. The guitar retails for $1,149 in the US, currently reduced down to $799. In the UK, these guitars are generally being sold for around £849 at the time of recording, and in Europe, you'd be generally looking at €999. Now, in terms of the things I love the most about this guitar, first of all is this guitar came out of the box set up basically perfectly. I've had no issues with it since it's arrived. The action has been absolutely dead level. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but if you just do your little truss rod test here, there's barely any clearance whatsoever, and there's been no issues with it fretting out. It's been fantastic for me in that regard. There's also, in terms of the overall quality control, like if you rub your, like if you do the test to check the frets, if you rub your fingers down here, the frets aren't sprouting at all. And also in terms of the overall fit and finish, there's been no blemishes that as far as I can see, no issues with like dodgy screw holes or anything like that. Overall, it's been absolutely fantastic. The other thing I really like about the guitar as well is the pickups in this thing, for me, they sound fantastic. I initially bought the guitar thinking that it came with USA-made Schecter pickups. What I was actually surprised at when I double-checked the spec for this video is that I realized that there are the Indonesia-made pickups, and honestly, I wouldn't have been able to tell. I don't think I would have been able to tell the difference otherwise. Even if you're someone who likes experimenting with pickups, I'd find it hard pressed to find a reason as to why you would change these, because I think they sound really, really good. And what I really like about these as well is because you get the 5-way blade, you get the split coil positions for the pickups as well. So for that kind of modern, aggressive, like spanky tone that you hear a lot of bands do, like Periphery is a very obvious example. It does that very well. In fact, you can hear it in the demo as I use this fourth position here. I think it sounds absolutely wonderful. The other thing I really like is there's a couple of really smart design choices on the guitar. First of all, it's got a bolt-on neck, which I'm perfectly happy with. I think it's a great way. I think it's a great way of making a guitar. And I know there's a lot of people who really like having things like neck through or set neck guitars. This guitar, because this guitar has got to be budget friendly. I think going for the bolt-on construction was absolutely the right choice. And the other thing I really like is, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but the access on the heel here is really, really good. So I'm not sure. So if you look here, when you want to get up to the dusty end of the guitar, nothing's in the way. Like, it's all cut out nicely here. So when you go to the higher end, to play the higher frets, it feels very, very comfortable to do so, which I really like. The other thing I really like is where they placed the neutral fret. Now, with fan fret guitars, for those who don't know, so you have this point in the middle. The neutral fret is the point where the frets like fan out from. So where it goes from here to the nut, and then like this towards the bridge. Now they've done it on this guitar on what looks like to me the 8th fret. So pretty much like center of the actual neck itself, and I think that's made it a very comfortable guitar to play up and down, because what you can sometimes have with, well, at least from what I've read from people who've had like neutral frets on the 12th fret, for example, is sometimes like the lower chords or like lower shapes can be a little harder to play because of just how extreme that fan is. And if you place it too low, you can have the opposite problem when you try and play solos, for example. So by placing it on the 8th, especially when it's a 2-inch fan from 25.5 to 27.5, I think it was the right decision to have it on the 8th. And you'll notice this as well, like if I just get some like chords there, you don't really need to think about it. The hand just naturally lands in the right positions up and down the neck, which I think it just, again, aids to how easy this guitar is to play. In terms of potential drawbacks with the guitar, there are some things to note. This one isn't too big of a deal, I don't think, but the guitar comes with a thin C neck shape profile with no graphite reinforcement. I think the reason they didn't go for the ultra thin C here is probably just it probably it's I imagine it's a cost saving measure because for what this guitar costs, you maybe can't put things like graphite reinforcement in it, so they probably had to increase the amount of wood. Now, for me, the neck has felt very comfortable, and maybe it would be more comfortable with some of the other guitars which have the ultra thin C neck shape, which I haven't tried any version of of Schecter's 8 strings with that. It is something to bear in mind, however. The other thing as well is it doesn't come with locking tuners, which I think is a bit of a shame, especially when you consider we have things like a hip shot bridge, and Schecter do actually do their own version of locking tuners. It is a shame that it doesn't include that, purely just for the fact that even if it doesn't necessarily increase tuning stability all that much, what it would do is it would speed up string changes. And when you're bearing in mind you're dealing with 2 extra strings compared to your normal 6 string guitar, that would have been a feature I would like to have seen. The two major issues I have with this guitar are whilst it's great that it does have a Graph Tech nut, one thing I have noticed is when you're playing on these lower strings, sorry, these lower chord shapes, I noticed that it's quite sharp on the edge of the nut. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but when you rub your finger over it, you do notice it kind of catching. So say, for example, you're playing like a lower chord here, or if you're sliding down, it catches that part of your finger quite a lot. Whilst you can, of course, sound that down a little bit, it's a shame that it's not something that they thought about when they were designing the guitar to maybe like keep that edge sanded off. The major thing that really does bother me about this guitar, bearing in mind that this costs £849, I'm very disappointed that it doesn't come with a gig bag. Now, I'm a touring musician, I'm a working musician. I regularly need to move my guitars around. Um, the fact that it doesn't come with a case means that it then puts the cost on me to then have to go and buy one, which I don't think is a fair thing to do, especially when it how much this guitar already costs and how little it would probably cost Schecter to make them. If you compare it to a company like PRS, for example, who with their entire SE range, they all include some kind of soft case, except for their acoustics, which I believe come with actual hard cases. I do think it's a shame that other companies are offering this when Schecter themselves aren't. And you may be able to turn to me and say, yeah, but I'm not in a touring position. I don't need to move it. That may be the case, but you could still find yourself in situations where you need to keep the guitar in storage, so it needs to go into a bag, or you need to, or if you're moving house, for example, or if you want to jam with your friends, like these things do, like the fact that a case would help so much in in those kind of circumstances, and bearing in mind the target audience that Schecter are going after, I do think it is a shame that Schecter do not include a gig bag with this guitar. That's something I would very much like to see pretty much like any guitar brand do. This isn't a problem that is unique to Schecter. It's something I would very much like to see them and others do in the future. Those drawbacks aside, I have to admit I'm absolutely in love with this thing. It's basically not left my lap since I got it a couple of weeks ago. It's been fun, a lot of fun to play. It's been a lot of fun to write with. I think it sounds great. I think it looks really, really cool. Overall, who would I recommend it to? I think I think it's the kind of guitar for people who are new to eight strings. They don't want to spend too much money, but also have like a certain level of quality that they're used to. And I think it ticks all of those boxes. So you've got something which will feel very comfortable in terms of like any kind of soloing that you're used to. Stay solid for the low strings. I don't think this is gonna. For a guitar with this level of features, I don't think this breaks the bank too much. Overall, it's Schecter. I've always been really good at this, putting a lot of features, a lot of build quality into guitar for a lot of money. So if you're looking for an eight-string guitar which has fan frets and doesn't cost a lot of money, it's hard to go wrong with the Schecter Omen Elite 8. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first review on my channel. If you did enjoy the video, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.